You may be seated. I understand tonight that we have kind of a big Cowboys fan here, so I just wanted to mark our turf a little bit. Walter Payton, the greatest running back of all time, not Emmitt Smith. Governor Christie, I'm sorry. Now, I will concede certain points. If you saw Governor Christie with President Obama a couple years ago at the Boardwalk at Point Pleasant, you'll know that Governor Christie had a higher passer rating than Jay Cutler last year. But we wanted to welcome you to Chicago. We've got a hat for you to take back to New Jersey. We appreciate it. We appreciate you demonstrating the athleticism that Republicans possess, particularly compared to Chicago Democrats. And now it's my pleasure, in addition to holding up the flag for our Bears and what may be to come, very much kind of a phoenix rising from the ashes, not indistinguishable from the Illinois Republican Party. It's my pleasure to introduce a rising star in the Illinois Republican Party who all of you know, who will introduce Governor Christie, and that's Ryan Higgins, the Schaumburg Township Republican committeeman. Ryan and the committeemen that are represented here tonight, representing these various Northwest suburban Republican townships in Cook County, are really the reason that Governor Rauner is Governor Rauner. We've said this for a lot of years, that the governor's mansion winning statewide election runs through Northwest suburban Cook County. And in 2014, you all proved that was the case. And it wasn't just the reason Governor Rauner won, it was the reason he won by the margin he did. And now we need to build on that victory to change the balance of power in the General Assembly. And it's going to be with leaders like Ryan Higgins, who commits an unbelievable amount of time when he's not practicing law and engaged in other philanthropic activities, to doing just that, building a Republican majority, not just in Cook County, but in the state of Illinois. So it's my pleasure to introduce Ryan Higgins, to introduce Governor Christie.
Thank you. I don't have a costume, so I don't know how to follow that one. But let's give another round of applause for Dan Proft and the entire Lincoln Day Dinner Committee for putting this together. In this room of a sold-out crowd of 900 people, on the heels of electing a new Republican governor, I have never been more proud to be a Northwest suburban Republican. We here, the folks in this room, we've worked for years in the long shadow of the city of Chicago. A city that's known for corruption and cronyism, and its reputation for those things is only exceeded by its record for failure. And that record for failure extends not just to the City Hall in Springfield, but down to the Capitol Dome in Springfield and the Chicagoan and the White House. And now, after all these years of hard work, our efforts have finally paid off. We had a great year in 2014, electing Bruce Rauner as governor and achieving record attendance at our annual family picnic, gubernatorial debate, and other events. And tonight, the Republican organizations in this room will gross about $150,000, which is more than 4 times what our Democrat local counterparts have in their bank account right now. It is you, the donors and volunteers in this room, who are working to restore the prowess of the Northwest suburban Republicans, and you have helped create this opportunity to save our state. We are honored here to welcome tonight one of our allies in our effort to elect Governor Rauner, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Governor Christie served as chairman of the Republican Governors Association through the November 2014 election, investing nearly $10 million in Illinois to help elect Bruce Rauner. Governor Christie believed in us. We believed in our candidate and what we all knew was possible in Illinois, and we won. More broadly, Governor Christie was at the helm of the RGA as we picked up 2 more governorships. We now control 31 governorships, which is the most in 16 years. And in his own blue state of New Jersey, he was twice elected governor, this last time in 2013, by a margin that exceeded 60%.
What's your favorite thing about being governor?
My favorite thing about being governor is that every day I get a chance to do something really great. I don't do something great every day, but I have a chance every day to do something great. Nobody needed to introduce me to the people of New Jersey. We know each other. I'm one of you.
With Chris, what you see is what you get.
Honest, strong-willed,
A high level of integrity.
There is no one above the law. There is no one immune to the law. I was a prosecutor for 7 years, and this much I know. I don't pretend that I have all the answers, but I know how to make decisions, and I know how to make things happen. It is not easy sometimes to speak the truth, but we wouldn't be here if we didn't admit to each other that we hadn't done as well as we should, and that there was a path to doing better.
Chris Christie has done a remarkable job. He's taken this state, which was going downhill, unfortunately, and he's brought it back. People are proud of him. People around the country are talking well of New Jersey, and Chris Christie gets a lot of the credit for that.
Thank you for giving me the greatest privilege I'm sure I'll ever have in my life, and that's to be the governor of the place where I was born and raised. I'm gonna leave here and go back to the State House. I'm gonna drive up to that building with the big gold dome on the top of it, and I'm gonna walk in the door and still shake my head. I do, every time. How the hell did this happen?
The New York Times calls you one of the most intriguing political figures of our time.
Yeah, go figure. I got sent here to do a job. I get sent here to be elected prom king.
Good luck, Governor Christie. Give him hell.
You bet I will. That's all I know how to do. You know that. There's only one promise I can make that matters. That I will not let anyone or anything, not any government, not any business, not anyone, get in between me and the completion of our mission. My mother had a very direct way about her. Excellent, excellent. Baloney. One of the things she used to say to me all the time was, just be yourself. Because then tomorrow, you're not gonna have to worry about remembering who you pretended to be yesterday. Sometimes people are gonna like it, sometimes people aren't, but be who you are. And so, this is who I am.
Chris Christie!
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so we got the Bears hat. That going for me. Add that to my collection. Thank you so much, Ryan, for your introduction. Thank you, Joe, chair of this dinner tonight. Appreciate all your hard work in making it happen. And I am really, really happy to be back in Illinois. I haven't been back here since the weekend before the election. And let me tell you a little bit story about my last visit to Illinois. That was my 9th visit of 2014 in support of the campaign of Bruce Rauner. And when I came the last time, we did a rally at the airport. We rode in this bus up to the airport, and I was there with Bruce and now the First Lady of Illinois and their children. And as you all will recall, this was a bruising, difficult campaign. And Bruce and his family were really put through the ringer and I'm so glad to be back in Illinois to be able to say these words. He was put through the ringer by former Governor Pat Quinn. Can't stop smiling. And they were down. The Rounders were tired. They had been through a lot. And they were just a few days away from decision day. And what I said to Bruce and his family at that time, I was getting ready to leave the bus to get on the plane to head to Florida. And I said to them, listen, I know this is hard. I've been through it in a state much like yours, with demographics much like yours, with odds just like you're facing. And I want to tell you something. I'm going to tell you right now before I leave this bus. You're going to be elected governor of Illinois on Tuesday, and you're going to win by 5 points. Now, I saw them look at me as if I were from Mars. They were just kind of shaking their heads a little bit and wondering what I was talking about. And Bruce told me later that when I left the bus, his wife looked at him and said, "That poor guy's been traveling too much." But on election night, it was great for me to call. As soon as the race was called, I called Bruce. He answered the phone, and he said, "Chief, you were right." And I said, "No, Bruce, the people of Illinois were right. They were right." So I'm thrilled to be back here because as chairman of the Republican Governors Association and a blue state governor, I made some particular investments in states that previous folks didn't think we could win. Like here in Illinois, where we now have a Republican governor. Like in the state of Massachusetts, where Republican Charlie Baker is now Governor Charlie Baker. And if you can believe this one, in the state of Maryland, in the shadow of Washington, D.C., Larry Hogan is now the Republican governor of Maryland. He won by 9 points over Marty O'Malley's lieutenant governor. You all were a part of the Republican miracle of 2014. And the Republican miracle, with all due respect to my friends in the United States Senate, was not the Senate. They had a map that helped them get to where they needed to get to. We had the exact opposite. 36 races, 22 defenses. And of those 22 defenses, 9 were in states that Barack Obama had won twice. We returned 8 of those 9 incumbent governors to office, and then added governors in Illinois, in Massachusetts, in Maryland, in Arkansas, in places that had previously been held by Democrats. How'd that happen? First of all, I came here tonight, and a lot of people said to me, "Why did you agree to come to this dinner?" And the reason I agreed to come to this dinner is because, as a party, we have to start being stronger and supporting people in tough neighborhoods like this. That's the way we're going to win back America. And America needs to be won back. Now, I traveled to 37 states during 2014, traveled 106,000 miles, and raised $117 million for Republican governors. And in the process of doing that, I learned a lot about this country. Things you can only learn by being on the ground in these states. And you hear from the press all the time that, America is an angry place, that voters are angry, and that's the way they explain election results. I don't agree. There's not anger in this country, there's anxiety. And it was best personified by a woman that I met in Florida. I was campaigning for Governor Rick Scott's re-election. I was working the rope line. I shook her hand and tried to move on like you're supposed to do. And she held on to my hand. One of the things I love about Florida, by the way, that makes it different than other states in America, is when people introduce themselves. Like tonight here in Illinois, I've been introduced to dozens and dozens of people, and they just say their name. In Florida, they say their name and they tell you how old they are. Don't understand why that is, but everyone in Florida seems proud of their age, no matter what it is, and feels the need to announce it to you. So this woman introduced herself and she said, "Governor, I'm 82 years old. And I have a question for you." I said, "Sure." And she said, "What's happened to our country? We used to control events. Now events control us. If I could explain to you in just one phrase the feeling that I detected in our country, it's that. What has happened to America? We used to control events. Now events control us. I will tell you what's happened to America. An absolute, abject failure of leadership in the Oval Office for the last 6 years, and it's got to stop." I've watched this president. I've watched him during a time of incredible opportunity in our nation's history and in the history of the world. An opportunity to assert American leadership, to make the world a more peaceful and stable place, and to make our country more prosperous and more filled with opportunity for our children and grandchildren. And what has happened during those periods of time? What's happened is that America has moved backwards. It's most starkly seen in our middle class, where middle-class taxpayers today, adjusted for inflation, make less money than they made in the year 2000. This president says he cares about the middle class, yet he has presided over the largest decline in the power of the middle class in this country's history because of his failed leadership. You know, in a way, I almost feel badly for him. In a way. You know, he's like a man in a dark room, feeling along the wall, struggling to try to find the light switch of leadership. Well, he hasn't found it for 6 years, and unfortunately for America, he's not going to find it in the next 2 either. It's not within him. You see, leadership matters. It makes a difference in this world. He has withdrawn America from the world, and I believe we live now in as dangerous a time as we've ever lived in, because American leadership is not being asserted around the world. He's now asking for authority to go to war with ISIS, and only months ago, he referred to them as the JV. He drew a red line in Syria and said that if chemical weapons were used, America would intervene. And then he said, never mind. And he's now stoking in Washington the idea that it's okay for a member of Congress not to show up when the prime minister of our greatest ally in the Middle East is coming to address Congress. And then he wonders why folks believe that we're not as supportive of Israel as we need to be for the one true democracy in the Middle East. American leadership matters at home, too. He sat and watched as an energy revolution is about to happen in our country, which could lead to even greater prosperity at home and even greater stability in the world. And yet, he has no national energy policy. All of the above is not a national energy policy, everybody. It's a bumper sticker. It's not a thoughtful policy. And we have the opportunity to revolutionize manufacturing in our country again. We have an opportunity to be a provider of energy around the world, to help to provide peace and stability in the world. And yet, we're 6 years in, and the president's national energy policy amounts to this: all of the above, and I'm against the Keystone Pipeline. Well, that's not a way to treat our neighbor in Canada. That's not a national energy policy. And it's another in a chronicle of events that derive directly from his failed leadership. We have a tax system that's broken, and corporations that want to leave America in order to make more money. And what's this president's solution to corporate inversions? To pass a law against corporate inversions, rather than to change the circumstances that make good businessmen and women feel they have to leave this country in order to fulfill their fiduciary responsibility to the owners of their companies. We need to have a tax policy in this country again that spurs investment in America, job creation in America, and opportunity in America, and this president has refused to give it to us for purely political reasons. He told us in 2004, we're not a collection of red states or blue states, but we're the United States. Inspirational words. Aspirational goals. Yet, I listened to his State of the Union address in January, and in my mind, it was one of the most divisive State of the Union speeches I've ever heard, giving his litany of what he would veto, right after the American people had tried to send him a message that they want to change in Washington, D.C. That's not leadership, everybody. Leadership is just as much about listening as it is about talking. Because if you don't listen, you can't understand. And if you don't understand, you can't think. And if you can't think, you can't reason. And if you cannot reason, you cannot persuade and bring our country together. The president has offered nice words, but little action behind it. See, I don't have that luxury in my state. I wake up every morning in a state that has 750,000 more Democrats than Republicans, a state that hasn't sent a Republican to the United States Senate in 42 years. Yeah, worse than you guys. And before I was elected in 2009, we hadn't elected a Republican statewide in 12 years to anything. That's a blue state, everybody. And I wake up every morning with a 24-16 deficit in the Senate and a 48-32 deficit in the lower house. Bruce Rauner and I compare notes all the time in that regard. And what I've told him is that when you're the governor, you don't have the luxury to say, I won't work with the other side. The people of New Jersey have elected to have divided government. It's my responsibility as governor to make it work. And we have. With a Democratic legislature, we balanced 5 budgets in a row without raising taxes. We've cut business taxes by $2.3 billion to spur job growth that has lowered our unemployment from nearly 10% when I entered office to just over 6% now. We've capped property tax growth. We've capped the interest arbitration awards that have been given to public employees, and we passed bipartisan pension and health benefit reform that'll save $120 billion for the taxpayers of New Jersey over the next 30 years. Every one of those accomplishments bipartisan. The president shouldn't be giving a State of the Union address listing the vetoes he will give. He should be reaching his hand out across the aisle and saying, I hear the American people, I hear the change that they asked for, and I will work in good faith with the other side. That's what real leadership is. That's how leadership gets things done. Now, you know, it's interesting. I was in Iowa on Monday. And whenever I go to Iowa, press always writes, well, he won't play in Iowa. He's too blunt. He's too direct. He's too forceful for Iowa. Well, of course, that's wrong because, you know, Iowans have invited me 13 times in the past 4 years to come to Iowa. So I always say, if they don't like me there, why the hell do they keep inviting me back? Interestingly, though, when I come to Illinois, no one says I won't play in Illinois. And you know, you need to know where leaders are coming from. You need to know how they got to be who they are. So you've seen the YouTube videos, and you've seen my fights with the teachers union, and you've seen some of my more interesting interactions at town hall meetings with my constituents. And that's part of who I am. But you need to know how I became that way. In that little video that we played beforehand, I mentioned my mom. Now, I come from a household, and I'm sure there are some people in this audience who can relate to this. I was raised in a household where I had a Sicilian mother and an Irish father. See, what this led to was to make me expert at conflict resolution right from the beginning. It wasn't that my parents fought all the time. I don't want to say that. But let's just say that my mother felt there was no argument not worth having. She used to say to us, she would tell us all the time exactly what she was thinking, almost to the point of exhaustion. And we'd say, Mom, stop already. She'd say, no, I need to get this off my chest. There'll be no deathbed confessions in this family. You're hearing it now. That was the house I was raised in. And I said I had a Sicilian mother because my mom passed away a decade ago. And as many of you probably have gone through in this audience, my mom was a lifetime smoker and she contracted lung cancer. And it is actually 11 years ago this weekend on Valentine's Day that she was diagnosed. And by the first week of May, she was near death. And I was at a conference. I was United States Attorney at the time, and I was at a conference in California. My brother called me and said, listen, Mom's really taken a turn for the worse. If you want to talk to her, you need to get home. So I took the red-eye flight home that night, and I landed the next morning at Newark Airport and went immediately to the hospital. And when I got there, she was kind of in and out of things. They'd started to give her morphine to deal with the pain. And so I sat there for a while, and finally she woke up. Now, my mother had not seen me for 5 days. I'd been away. And typical her, there was no hello or anything else. She said, what day is it? I said, it's Friday. So what time is it? I said, it's 9:30 in the morning. She said, go to work. And I said, Mom, I decided to take today off. I'm going to spend today with you. I'm not going to work. And she goes, Christopher, it is a work day. Go to work. I said, Mom, are you afraid you're not getting your taxpayers' money's worth? Like, I'll make up the time. Don't worry about it. She reached over and she grabbed my hand and she said, Christopher, go to work. It's where you belong. There's nothing left unsaid between us. She knew she was dying. And she was giving me permission to let go. And I could let go because that's the way she had raised me. Nothing left unsaid between us. She had teased about no deathbed confessions, yet here we were. And you know what? There weren't any. There was nothing left I needed to say to her. And no deep, dark secrets or complaints or concerns that she needed to share with me. So when you see me on the news or read about me in the newspapers and you wonder, why is he like that? That's why. That's the way she raised us. She taught us that in a trusting relationship, you need to tell the other person what you think and how you feel without varnish, without equivocation. And if she were alive to see this circus that my life has become, if she were able to travel with me on the airplane today and come here and watch what's happened to me in Illinois today and see all of you, she would say to me, Chris, they trust you. Tell them the truth. Tell them how you feel. I don't know that she'd say that that was the essence of leadership, because I don't know that she thought about those things in that way. But that's what she taught me. That if you want people to trust you enough to follow you, you need to tell them the truth. Sometimes when they don't even want to hear it. And I think what our country needs today more than anything else is a full dose of truth-telling with the American people. Not to the American people, but with the American people. To tell the truth as you see it and where and how you want to lead. And then to begin to march. And I believe that if we do that, that the American people will follow. Because we always have. We fought the fights that were needed to be fought. We've stood up for the principles that needed to be stood up for. And more than anything else, we've always been an optimistic and hopeful people that understand that if we work hard enough and tell each other the truth, that America's best days are still ahead of it. I'm not consigned to the 21st century being someone else's century. if we do what we need to do, if we tell each other the truth, if we make the hard decisions, if we lead, the 21st century can be the second American century in this world, and I pray that that's exactly what we are willing to do, because the world needs a second American century. And I want to conclude tonight with a message to all of you who care enough about your towns, your county, your state, and your country to be here and to be involved day to day in trying to make it a better place. The founders of our country were extraordinary men and women. And to me, one of the most extraordinary of all of them was John Adams. John Adams left his family on a regular basis to help build this country, both here at home and its relationships around the world. And as he neared the end of his life, and the country at the same time neared its 50th birthday, Adams was gravely concerned that Americans no longer cared enough about their own country to help build it to be bigger and better and to fight to defend it. And so, up at his farm in Braintree, as he neared death, he wrote in his diary for posterity. He wrote for us. He wrote for us to someday read and hopefully be inspired by. And he wrote this particular passage, which I think applies to all of us and the challenges that our country faces in the very near future. He wrote, "You shall never know the sacrifices that were made to secure for you your liberty. I pray you'll make a good use of it. For if you do not, I shall repent in heaven for ever having made the sacrifice at all." Powerful words for any generation of Americans. Powerful words for us today who are searching once again for America to control events and not have events control us. All of you in this room deserve credit for what you've done for your communities, for your state, and for your country. Adams looks down on us tonight, I am certain, from heaven. And he is not repenting when he looks at the people in this room. He knows that you understand the sacrifices that were made for you to secure your liberty. You are making a good use of it. But we need to do better. We need to do better in this country, and we can do better with stronger, more decisive leadership from the top of our government on down. And it's all of you who will decide whether we will move forward to a brighter, more peaceful, and prosperous tomorrow, or whether we will go back to yesterday and failed leadership that does not serve our country or the world well. But the greatest thing about America is this: it's up to us. There's no greater power, no king or queen who are going to determine that answer for us. It's us. It's we the people. And what we need to remember is that we're the only country in the world who was ever founded with one of its three principles, founding principles, being the pursuit of happiness. What an extraordinary country we are. We value life and liberty, but we also value equally the pursuit of happiness. It is now up to us. I will tell you this: I am not willingly going to be a member of the first generation that leaves this country worse off for the next generation than it was left to me. I am not going to willingly or quietly watch our country decline and no longer be the most prosperous, powerful, influential nation in the history of the world. I will not quietly allow failed leadership to masquerade itself any longer. We need to call it as we see it. We need to tell the truth. We need to fight for this country and its future. And if we do, I know, and so do you, that we won't be part of that generation that leaves this country worse off. We'll be the one that makes it better. Thank you all very much. Congratulations on your great victories this fall, and let's do some more winning in 2016.